primitive agrarian society at this time. Harvest time was an exciting time. It was a time of celebration in the streets. They had abundant food, relief from worry. So much of the time in that day was spent just trying to get food to eat. Today we've got 30-minute meals. We've got fast food. We've got peanut butter and jelly. We've got all kinds of things to eat anytime that we want to eat. Probably if you wanted to eat, if you got hungry, you could go to your cabinet, your pantry, your bread box, something. You could open your refrigerator, and there'd be something there for you to eat. Even if it's not what you particularly wanted to eat, there'd be something there for you to eat. But in that day, it wasn't like that. You had to work for everything that you ate. And so this is going on, this time of harvest. It's a time of celebration. They were gathering the stalks of wheat and barley. They were threshing them at night on the threshing floor. They would take a big pitchfork or rake. They would toss it up in the air as the wind would blow through across the threshing floor. The chaff, the stalks of wheat would blow off, but the grain would fall to the ground on the threshing floor. And they would do this and do this and do this. And at night they would have that. And then they would roast that grain. I don't know. It sounds good. Probably break my teeth. Brother John would say, don't eat that. It's not good for your teeth, Brother Steve. But it sounds good. And then they would grind it up just like we have ground grain today. We have flour, and they would use that to make their bread. They would make fried cakes with it. And the scripture says that this one particular man named Boaz, and we almost meet him immediately at this point, that he's a relative of Elimelech's. And that he is a man of standing, and that just means that he has worth in the eyes of other people. He has integrity. People look at him and they can count on him for doing what is right. And so this first point that I want to make for us today is that God cares for you. He cares for the poor and the oppressed in particular. For Naomi, part of his care was that God had put in Ruth's heart a love and desire to go with her and to care for her and to follow her God as she experienced God through Naomi's faith. And he can do whatever he wants to because he's God. And part of what was in Ruth was also a work ethic. She and Naomi were two poor widows. They didn't have any other means of support when they came back, but Ruth said, we've got to have something to eat. I'm going to go get us something to eat. And she asked Naomi about it. And Naomi gives her blessing. And so as Ruth goes, she sees a field that's being harvested. And there's probably several fields that are being harvested, but this one particular field, for whatever reason, she chooses to go there. And she first goes to the foreman, and she asks, can I have permission to glean here? Now, what gleaning was following along behind the harvesters. They go through with their sickle, and they would grab a handful of the stalks of wheat or barley. Barley was the poor person's grain. Wheat was the better type of grain. But they would cut that at the base, and then they would, when they got enough of that, they would tie one of the stalks as a little rope around it, a binding, and that would be their sheaf of wheat. We sing that, bringing in the sheaves. Well, that's what that is. But there would always be a little bit that was left, a little bit that fell out, a little bit that was laying there on the ground. And we know that part of God's care was way back in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 22. Even before God led them into the promised land, he told them through Moses, the people, he said, when you reap the harvest of your land, don't reap to the very edges of your field. Don't gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and the alien. I am the Lord your God. And this was part of God's care for the poor and for the stranger. At harvest time, they could go to the edges of the field. They could go behind the harvesters. They could pick up the heads of grain or just stalks that were laying there. They could take that back for themselves so that they would have bread to eat as well.